Hello everyone, here is Andy, here's Alb on Fire. Today we're gonna have quite an unusual episode. I just thought that there are so many entries in our journal in Dragon Age that I feel uncomfortable that I've been ignoring those. And at the same time, I don't want to spend too much time reading those during a real episode. I mean, a live episode, because this is a real episode too. And simultaneously, the third thing is that I have an hour or so today before I go to sleep, and it's not enough to have a full-fledged stream. But at the same time, it's quite enough to read at least some journal entries, but I think most of those we can successfully read. And well, that's what I decided. Let's go launch the game, and we'll just stay in the camp in Dragon Age and calmly read all the things that are there in the journal, all the culture and history notes, all the religion and stuff. And I think the game is kind of too loud. So let's load the game and see what we have there. A monumental task stands in front of us, so I'm not gonna touch any levels and stuff. We'll do that on the stream. Yeah, it looks like everything is being recorded and everything is fine. The journal. Let's examine what we've got. Let's start with books and songs, maybe. The first one is The Legend of Calenhad, and I'm still puzzled that there is no chapter 1. There's history of the Chantry, chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 4. There's Dane and the Werewolf, the Noladar Anthology of Dwarven Poetry. So, yeah, let's begin with this Dane and the Werewolf. Let me sing of heroes and honor lost and found, of monsters and men in all forms, of Dane, hunter without peer, feared by the forest of Ferelden, who one autumn morn spied a heart of pure white in beam of warmest sun, a prize for huntsman's spear. Through the green wood they ran, hart and hunter, bringing the stag to spear at last in long-forgotten grove. Heedless that the chase had waked a hunger in the golden wood, a werewolf, a creature with mind of man, lured by the hunt and come forth to lay claim to the heart as rightful tribute, drawn by the scent of cooling blood. In the silence the two hunters held, Dane spear-armed against the wolf with all his brood, knew with sinking heart he was lost, steeled for the winding rods of the fate. Then the beast spoke, human-like in voice, "You have taken the stag from my woods and my pack, but nothing comes without a cost." The wolf pack circled ever closer, and he who felled boars and bears with his bright blade knew fear. They spoke his name in roars like gravestones, offering a beast's bargain. Die here, huntsman, alone and forgotten, or take my place amongst the wolves as I take your place amongst men. Thus was a bargain struck, and Dane the wolf pack served in woven form, and the werewolf to his family sped as Dane, 1 year and a day all told. But some things cannot be repent, some coinage cannot be unspent, when hearts are wagered, a fisher rent. From the saga Dane and the Werewolf, as recorded by the minstrel Akam 485 black. The day exhaustion plays its role here, but quite an interesting legend. So they swap their roles for 1 year and 1 day. I wonder whether Dane's family spotted the difference. Probably they did. The Noladar Anthology of Dwarven Poetry. The undead exhumed, born from the shallowed graves, mined from the living. By the Paragon Linkar 744 Storm. Do you like fried mush and nog? I don't like them, Mr. Clog. I do not like fried mush and nog. Would you eat them on a rug? If you eat, you'll get a hug. I wouldn't eat them on a rug, From you I wouldn't want a hug. Then would you drink them from a jug? Come on, give them a chug. I wouldn't drink them from a chug. I'd rather eat a slimy slug. Would you eat them with a bug? Would you share them with a thug? I wouldn't share them with a thug. I wouldn't eat them with a bug. Not for a hug, not on a rug, from a jug, I'll not chug. Come on. Now, Mr. Clog, are you on some kind of drug? Eat them in this hole I dug. Eat them, don't just shrug. I've had it, Mr. Clog. Down to the hole you dug. Down with the thug, and the slug, and the bug. By the Paragon Zeus, 2:12 Glory. Never surrender dwarvish blood, may be lukewarm, but vital as ore. It looks like a Japanese haiku. Never surrender, dwarvish blood, may be lukewarm, but vital as ore. How many syllables are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exactly 575. So the correct number of syllables for a haiku or a hoko. Haikus, I think, were different. By the Paragon Linkar 748 Storm. There once was a miner of lyrium whose face looked like a perineum. The dad got him too, not much he could do. With a face like that, he was a shoe-in. I might not get something. I just very often don't get poetry in English. I probably will need to take a course into English poetry one day, and I'm quite serious about that. I thought that if I were to study in some university, whatever that could be, like, I desired psychology, I think I would still go for some philology, linguistics, and potentially poetry, and definitely pronunciation. So, by the wordsmith, Carol of House Yonok, 911 Dragon. Okay, so we are not touching the Legend of Kelin Had, chapter 1 and 2, chapter 2 and 3, because we don't have chapter 1. And the History of the Chantry, chapter 3 and 4, we are waiting for chapter 2 to surface somewhere. I hope I haven't missed them somewhere. Right, let's go magic and religion. The first one, Andriel, goddess of the hunt. Hear me, sons and daughters of the people. I am sister of the moon, mother of hares, lady of the hunt, Andriel. Remember my teachings, remember the Ver Tandal, the way of 3 trees that I have given you. Vir Essen, the way of the arrow, be swift and silent, strike true, do not waver, and let not your prey suffer, that is my way. Vir Borasan, the way of the bow, as the sapling bends, so must you. In yielding, find resilience. In pliancy, find strength. That is my way. Vir Adahalen, the way of the wood. Receive the gifts of the hunt with mindfulness. Respect the sacrifice of my children. Know that your passing shall nourish them in turn. That is my way. Remember the ways of the hunter, and I shall be with you. From the charge of Andriel, goddess of the hunt. I think I've met this name Andriel somewhere else in some other game, but I might be mistaken. Dirtaman, keeper of secrets. The twins Falandin and Dirtaman are the eldest children of Elgarnan, the All-Father, and Mithal, the Protector. The brothers were inseparable from the moment of their conception, known for their great love for each other. That is why we often speak of Falandin in one breath and Dirtamin the next, for they cannot bear to be apart, not even in our tales. When the world was young, the gods often walked the earth, and Falandin and Dirtaman were no exception. Both were delighted by the many wonders of our earth. They played with the animals, whispered to the trees, and bathed in the lakes and streams. Their days were filled with bliss, and they didn't know sorrow. And then one day, while passing through the forest, Falandin and Dirtaman came across an old and sickly deer resting beneath a tree. "Why do you sit so still, little sister?" asked Falandin. "Play with us," said Dirtaman. "Alas," spoke the deer, "I cannot. I am old, and although I wish to go to my rest, my legs can no longer carry me." Taking pity on the deer, Palandin gathered her up in his arms and carried her to her rest beyond the vale. Dirty Man tried to follow them, but the shifting grey paths beyond the vale wouldn't let him. Separated for the first time from Palandin, Dirty Man wandered aimlessly till he came across two ravens. "You are lost, and soon you will fade," the raven named Fear said to Dirty Man. "Your brother has abandoned you. He no longer loves you," said the other, named Deceit. "I'm not lost, and Palandin hasn't abandoned me," replied Dirty Man. He subdued the ravens and bade them carry him to Palandin. This they did, for they had been defeated and were now bound to Dirty Man's service. When Dirty Man found Palandin, he found also the deer, who once again was light on her feet, for her spirit was released from her weakened body. Both Palandin and Dirty Man rejoiced to see this. Palandin vowed that he would remain to carry all the dead to their place beyond, just as he did the deer, and Dirty Man stayed with him, for the twins cannot bear to be apart. From the story of Palandin and Dirty Man, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Rolatherin clan of the Dalish elves. Elgar'nan, god of vengeance. Long ago, when time itself was young, the only things in existence were the sun and the land. The sun, curious about the land, bowed his head close to her body, and Elgar'nan was born in the place where they touched. The sun and the land loved Elgar'nan greatly, for he was beautiful and clever. As a gift to Elgar'nan, the land brought forth great birds and beasts of sky and forest, and all manner of wonderful green things. Elgar'nan loved his mother's gifts, and praised them highly, and walked amongst them often. The sun, looking upon the fruitful land, saw the joy that Elgar'nan took in her works, and grew jealous. Out of spite, he shone his face full upon all the creatures the earth had created, and burned them all to ashes. The land cracked and split from bitterness and pain, and cried salt tears for the loss of all she had wrought. The pool of tears cried, for the land became the ocean, and the cracks in her body the first rivers and streams. Elgar'nan was furious at what his father had done and vowed vengeance. He lifted himself into the sky and wrestled the sun, determined to defeat him. They fought for an eternity, and eventually the sun grew weak, while Elgar'nan's rage was unabated. Eventually, Elgar'nan threw the sun down from the sky and buried him in a deep abyss created by the land's sorrow. With the sun gone, the world was covered in shadow, and all that remained in the sky were the reminders of Elgar'nan's battle with his father, drops of the sun's lifeblood, which twinkled and shimmered in the darkness. From the tale of Elgar'nan and the sun, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Rolatherin clan of the Dalish elves. Fen'Harel, the Dread Wolf. There is precious little we know about Fen'Harel, for they say he didn't care for our people. Elgar'nan and Mythal created the world as we know it, Andriel taught us the ways of the hunter, Silaise and June gave us fire and crafting, but Fen'Harel kept to himself and plotted the betrayal of all the gods. And after the destruction of Arlathan, when the gods could no longer hear our prayers, it is said that Fen'Harel spent centuries in a far corner of the earth, giggling madly and hugging himself in glee. The legends say that before the fall of Arlathan, the gods we know and revere fought an endless war with others of their kind. There is not a Hachran among us who remembers these others. Only in dreams do we hear whispered the names of Geldauran and Derntal and Daenerys, for they are the forgotten ones, the gods of terror and malice, spite and pestilence. In ancient times, only Fen'Harel could walk without fear among both our gods and the forgotten ones, for although he is kin to the gods of the people, the forgotten ones knew of his cunning ways and saw him as one of their own. This word, Hachran, something that I cannot remember at all. And that is how Fen'Harel tricked them. Our gods saw him as brother, and they trusted him when he said that they must keep to the heavens while he arranged a truce. And the Forgotten Ones trusted him also when he said he would arrange for the defeat of our gods, if only the Forgotten Ones would return to the abyss for a time. They trusted Fen'Harel, and they were all of them betrayed. And Fen'Harel sealed them away so they could never again walk among the people. From the tale of Fen'Harel's triumph, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralatherin clan of the Dalish elves. Interesting. They say, the name of the note is Gillanane, mother of the Hala. They say Gillanane was one of the people in the days before Alothan, and the chosen of Andriel the huntress. She was very beautiful, with hair of snowy white, and as graceful as a gazelle. She kept always to Andriel's ways, and Andriel favored her above all others. One day, while hunting in the forest, Gillanane came across a hunter she didn't know. At his feet lay a hawk, shot through the heart by an arrow. Gillanane was filled with rage, for the hawk, along with the hare, is an animal. Was filled with rage, for the hawk, along with the hare, is an animal much beloved of Andriel. Gillanane demanded that the hunter make an offering to Andriel in exchange for taking the life of one of her creatures. The hunter refused, and Gillanane called upon the goddess to curse him so that he could never again hunt and kill a living creature. Gillanane's curse took hold, and the hunter found that he was unable to hunt. His prey would dart out of sight and his arrows would fly astray. His friends and family began to mock him for his impotence, for what use is a hunter who cannot hunt? Ashamed, the hunter swore he would find Gillanane and repay her what she had done to him. He found Gillanane while she was out on a hunt with her sisters, and lured her away from them with lies and false words. He told Gillanane that he had learned his lesson and begged her to come with him, so she could teach him to make a proper offering to Andriel. Moved by his plea, Gillanane followed the hunter, and when they were away from all of her sisters, the hunter turned on Gillanane. He blinded her first, and then bound her as one would bind a kill fresh from the hunt. But because he was cursed, the hunter couldn't kill her. Instead, he left her for dead in the forest. And Gillanane prayed to the gods for help. She prayed to Elgar'nan for vengeance, to Mother Mithal to protect her, but above all, she prayed to Andriel. Andriel sent her hares to Gillanane, and they chewed through the ropes that bound her, but Gillanane was still wounded and blind, and couldn't find her way home. So Andriel turned her into a beautiful white deer, the first Hala, and Gillanane found her way back to her sisters, and led them to the hunter who was brought to justice. And since that day, the Hala have guided the people, and have never led us astray, for they listen to the voice of Gillanane. From the tale of Gillanane as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralatherin clan of the Dalish elves. June, god of the craft. We dedicate all our crafts to June, for it is he who taught the people to bend the branches of trees to make our bows, and to fashion coverings of furs and ironbark. Without June, would we have the Aravel or the harnesses for our Hala? When the people were young, we wandered the forests without purpose. We drank from streams and ate the berries and nuts that we could find. We didn't hunt, for we had no bows. We wore nothing, for we had no knowledge of spinning or needlecraft. We shivered in the cold nights and went hungry through the winters, when all the world was covered in ice and snow. Then Sileis, the hearth keeper, came and gave us fire and taught us how to feed it with wood. June taught us to fashion bows and arrows and knives so that we could hunt. We learned to cook the flesh of the creatures we hunted over Sileis' fire, and we learned to clothe ourselves in their furs and skins, and the people were no longer cold and hungry, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralatherin clan of the Dalish elves. Let me just check if the properties are all right. Interesting. Why 31%, really? Interesting. Okay, back to the next note. Silas, the Hearth Keeper. Silas, the Hearth Keeper, is seen as the sister of Andriel Huntress. While Andriel loved to run with the creatures of the wild, Silas preferred to stay by her home tree, occupying herself with gentle arts and song. It is Silas who gave us fire and taught us how to use it. It is Silas who showed us how to heal with herbs and with magic, and how to ease the passage of infants into this world. And again, it is Silas who showed us how to spin the fibers of plants into thread and rope. We owe much to Silas, and that is why we sing to her when we kindle the fires and when we put them out. That is why we sprinkle our aravels with Silas's fragrant tree moss and ask that she protect them and all within. As told by Gisharel, keeper of the Relafrin clan of the Dalish elves. The next one is gonna be the Eonar. When the Imperium occupied the area that is present-day Ferelden, they had two sides dedicated to magical experimentation at the extreme ends of the Imperial Highway. The southern one was the fortress of Ostagar, which looked out over the Korkari wilds. The northern one was Eonar, although the exact location is now a secret known only to a handful of Templars. Whatever it was the Tevinter were trying to discover at Eonar, their work was never completed. The fortress was overrun by disciples of Andraste upon hearing the news of her death. According to legend, it was a massacre, eerily silent, for the invaders caught the mages while all but one of them were in the Fade. The site was left structurally sound, but spiritually damaged. Possibly because of this, the Chantry chose to put it to use as a prison. Accused Maleficarum and apostates are held in the confines of Eonar. Those who have a powerful connection to the Fade, and particularly to demons, will inevitably attract something across the veil, making the guilty somewhat easier to tell from the innocent. From Of Fires, Circles and Templars, A History of Magic in the Chantry, by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Black City. No traveler to the Fade can fail to spot the Black City. It is one of the few constants of that ever-changing place. No matter where one might be, the city is visible, always far off, for it seems that the only rule of geography in the Fade is that all points are equidistant from the Black City. Equidistant. Wow, beautiful word. Understandable, but still a new one for me. I want to write it down to ponder on it a bit. The chant teaches that the Black City was once the seat of the Maker, from whence he ruled the Fate, left empty when man turned away from him. Dreamers do not go there, nor do spirits. Even the most powerful demons seem to avoid the place. It was golden and beautiful once, so the story goes, until a group of powerful Magister lords from the Tevinter Imperium devised a means of breaking in. When they did so, their presence defiled the city, turning it black, which was perhaps the least of their worries. From beyond the veil, spirits and demons by enchanter Myrdrommel. The Chant of Light Redemption. Many are those who wander in sin, despairing that they are lost forever, but the one who repents, who has faith, unshaken by the darkness of the world, and boasts not, nor gloats over the misfortunes of the weak, but takes delight in the Maker's law and creations, she shall know the peace of the Maker's benediction. The light shall lead her safely through the paths of the world and into the next. For she who trusts in the Maker fires her water, and the moth sees light and goes toward flame. She should see fire and go towards light. The veil holds no uncertainty for her, and she will know no fear of death, for the Maker shall be her beacon and her shield, her foundation and her sword. From Transfigurations 10. Hierarchy of the Circle. It is no simple matter safeguarding ordinary men from mages and mages from themselves. Each circle tower must have some measure of self-government, for it is ever the Maker's will that men be given the power to take responsibility for our own actions, to sin and fail, as well as to achieve the highest grace and glory on our own strength. Yes, who will be tasked with the protection of the circle must be aware of its workings. The first enchanter is the heart of any tower. He will determine the course his circle will take, he will choose which apprentices may be tested and made full mages, and you will work most closely with him. Assisting the first enchanter will be the senior enchanters, a small council of the most trusted and experienced magi in the tower. From this group, the next first enchanter is always chosen. Beneath the council are the enchanters. These are the teachers and mentors of the tower, and you must get to know them in order to keep your finger on the pulse of the circle, for the enchanters will always know what is happening among the children. All those who have passed the heroine but have not taken apprentices are mages. This is where most trouble in the circle lies, in the idleness and inexperience of youth. The untested apprentices are the most numerous denizens of any tower, but they more often pose threats to themselves due to their lack of training than to anyone else. Knight Commander Serene of the Chantry Templars in a letter to his successor. History of the Circle. It is a truth universally acknowledged that nothing is more successful at inspiring a person to mischief as being told not to do something. Unfortunately, the Chantry of the Divine Age had some trouble with obvious truths. Although it didn't outlaw magic, quite the contrary, as the Chantry relied upon magic to kindle the eternal flame which burns in every brazier in every Chantry, it relegated mages to lighting candles and lamps, perhaps occasional dusting of rafters and eaves. I'll give my readers a moment to contemplate how well such a role satisfied the mages of the time. It surprised absolutely no one when the mages of Valraeo, in protest, snuffed the sacred flames of the cathedral and barricaded themselves inside the choir loft. No one, that is, but divine Ambrosia II, who was outraged and attempted to order an exalted march upon her own cathedral. Even her most devout Templars discouraged that idea. For 21 days the fires remained unlit while negotiations were conducted, legend tells us, by shouting back and forth from the loft. The mages went cheerily into exile in a remote fortress outside of the capital, where they would be kept under the watchful eye of the Templars and a council of their own, elder magi. Outside of normal society and outside of the Chantry, the mages would form their own close society, the Circle, separated for the first time in human history. Of Fire, Circles, and Templars, A History of Magic in the Chantry, by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Heroine. Among apprentices of the Circle, nothing is regarded with more fear than the heroine. Little is known about this rite of passage, and that alone would be cause for dread. But it is well understood that only those apprentices who pass the trial are ever seen again. They return as full members of the Circle of Magi. Of those who fail, nothing is known. Perhaps they are sent away in disgrace. Perhaps they are killed on the spot. I heard one patently ridiculous rumor among the Circle at Rivain, which claimed that failed apprentices were transformed into pigs, fattened up, and served at dinner to the senior enchanters, but I could find no evidence that the Rivain Circle ate any particular quantity of pork. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genitivi. Maleficarum. It has been asked, what are Maleficarum? How shall we know them? I have been as troubled by this question as you. You have come to me for the wisdom of the Maker, but none have seen the Maker's heart, save beloved Andraste. And so I have done, as all mortals must, and looked to the words of his prophet for answers, and there I found respite from a troubled mind. For she has said to us, magic exists to serve man, and never to rule over him. Therefore I say to you, they who work magic which dominates the minds and hearts of others, they have transgressed the Maker's law. Also, Our Lady said to us, those who bring harm without provocation to the least of his children are hated and accursed by the Maker. And so it is made clear to me, as it should be to us all, the magic which fuels itself by harming others, by the letting of blood, is hated by the Maker. Those mages who honor the Maker and keep his laws we welcome as our brothers and sisters, Those who reject the laws of the Maker and the words of his prophet are apostate. They shall be cast out and given no place among us. From the sermons of Justinian I. And thus we finish magic and religion, by the way. But still it glows yellow. I have no idea why. Let's close the journal and see if it changes. I'm sorry, there are 6 more notes. Okay. Just a moment, I'll have a sip. So, the next one. The cardinal rules of magic. You must not be under the misimpression that magic is all-powerful. There are limits, and not even the greatest mages may overcome them. No one, for instance, has found any means of traveling, either over great distances or small ones, beyond putting one foot in front of the other. The immutable nature of the physical world prevents this. So no, you may not simply pop over to Minrathous to borrow a cup of sugar, nor may you magic the essay you forgot in the apprentice dormitory to your desk. You will simply have to be prepared. Similarly, even when you send your mind to the fade, your body remains behind. Only once has this barrier been overcome, and repeatedly the spell required 2/3 of delirium in the Tevinter Imperium, as well as the lifeblood of several hundred slaves. The results were utterly disastrous. Finally, life is finite. A truly great healer may bring someone back from the very precipice of death, when breath and heartbeat have ceased, but the spirit still clings to life. But once the spirit has fled the body, it cannot be recalled. It is no failing of your skills or power, it's simple reality. From the lectures of first enchanter Vencellus. The 4 schools of magic. Creation. Opposition in all things, earth, sky, for winter, summer, for darkness, light. By my will alone is balance sundered, and the world given new life. Trinodius 5.5. The school of creation, sometimes called the school of nature, is the second of all the schools of matter, the balancing force and complement of entropy. Creation magic manipulates natural forces, transforming what exists and bringing new things into being. Creation requires considerable finesse, more than any other school, and is therefore rarely mastered. Those mages who have made a serious study of creation are the highest in demand, useful in times of peace as well as war. From the 4 schools, a treatise by first enchanter Josephus. The 4 schools of magic. Entropy. To you, my second-born, I grant this gift. In your heart shall burn an unquenchable flame, all-consuming and never satisfied. Thenodis 5.7. The second of the 2 schools of matter, entropy, is opposing force of creation. For this reason, it is often called the school of negation. Nothing lives without death. Time inevitably brings an end to all things in the material world, and yet in this ending is the seed of a beginning. A river may flood its banks, causing havoc, but bringing new life to its floodplain. The fire that burns a forest ushers a new growth. And so it is with entropic magic that we manipulate the forces of erosion, decay, and destruction to create anew. From the 4 schools, a treatise by first enchanter Josephus. Next one is the 4 schools of magic. Primal. Those who oppose thee shall know the wrath of heaven. Field and forest shall burn, the seas will rise and devour them, wind shall tear their nations from the face of the earth, lightning shall rain down from the sky, they shall cry out to their false gods and find silence. Andraste 7.19. Sometimes called the school of power, the primal school is the second of the schools of energy, balanced by spirit, and concerns the most visible and tangible forces of nature itself. This is the magic of war, fire, ice, and lightning, devastation. This is what the vast majority imagines when they hear the word magic. From the 4 schools, a treatise by first enchanter Josephus. And finally, the 4 schools of magic spirit. And the voice of the Maker shook the fates, saying, "In my image I have wrought my firstborn. You have been given dominion over all that exists. By your will all things are done, yet you do nothing. The realm I've given you is formless, ever-changing." Trinodes 5:4. The first of the 2 schools of energy, spirit, is opposed by the primal school. It is the school of mystery, the ephemeral school. This is the study of the invisible energies which surround us at all times, yet are outside of nature. It is from the Fade itself that this magic draws its power. Students of this school cover everything from direct manipulation of mana and spell energies to the study and summoning of spirits themselves. By its nature, an esoteric school, as most others know virtually nothing about the Fade, studies of spirit magic are often misunderstood by the general populace, or even confused for blood magic, an unfortunate fate for a most useful branch of study. From the 4 schools, a treatise by first enchanter Josephus. And the final note in this blog is Beyond the Veil, Spirits and Demons. It is challenging enough for the casual observer to tell the difference between the Fade and the creatures that live within it, let alone between one type of spirit and another. In truth, there is little that distinguishes them, even for the most astute mages. Since spirits are not physical entities and are therefore not restricted to recognizable forms, or even having a form at all, one can never tell for certain what is alive and what is merely part of the scenery. It is therefore advisable for the inexperienced researcher to greet all objects he encounters. Typically, we misuse the term spirit to refer only to the benign or at least less malevolent creatures of the Fade, but in truth, all the denizens of the realm beyond the veil are spirits. As the Chant of Light notes, everything within the Fade is a mimicry of our world. A poor imitation, for the spirits do not remotely understand what they are copying. It is no surprise that much of the Fade appears like a manuscript translated from Tevinter into Orlesian and back again by drunken initiates. In general, spirits are not complex, or rather they are not complex as we understand such things. Each one seizes upon a single facet of human experience: rage, hunger, compassion, hope, etc. This one idea becomes their identity. We classify as demons those spirits who identify themselves with darker human emotions and ideas. The most common and weakest form of demon one encounters in the Fade is the rage demon. They are much like perpetually boiling kettles, for they exist only to vent hatred, but rarely have an object to hate. Somewhat above these are the hunger demons, who do little but eat or attempt to eat everything they encounter, including other demons. This is rarely successful. Then there are the sloth demons. These are the first intelligent creatures one typically finds in the Fade. They're dangerous only on those rare occasions that they can be induced to get up and do harm. Desire demons are more clever and far more powerful, using all forms of bribery to induce mortals into their realms: wealth, love, vengeance, whatever lies closest to your heart. The most powerful demons yet encountered are the pride demons, perhaps because they, among all their kind, most resemble man. From Beyond the Veil, Spirits and Demons by enchanter Midromal. Actually, this one contains a false note, a false piece of information, right? Because it says that sloth demons are lazy, and another entry that we read told us specifically that those were not lazy at all, and they only made other creatures lazy and inactive. And I think this is the note where I, many years ago, the first time thought that pride is actually a very dangerous sin, that it can intoxicate many minds, because I think this idea was sown into my head by Dragon Age exactly, but I cannot find where exactly. Aravals. The Dalish, who band together in small groups of blood relatives, travel in ornately carved wagons known as Araval, drawn by large white stags called Hala. The Araval are a unique sight, beautiful in their swooping curvature and adorned with broad hoods and bright silken clothes that flap in the wind, often displaying the noble banners that once flew over the family's house. Most humans refer to the Araval as land ships, for in a strong wind it can often appear as if the elves travel in lone boats with sails high overhead to announce their arrival or warn others away. The Hala are unique to the elves and any, but elven handlers consider them ornery and almost impossible to train. To the Dalish, they are noble beasts superior in breeding to the horse. Certainly most humans would agree that the Hala are as beautiful as the elves themselves. The fact that many imperial nobles maintain a bounty on Hala horns that find their way into Tevinter is an affront the Dalish consider unforgivable. Few among us can claim to have seen the Dalish land ships up close. Any human who sees them on the horizon does well to head the other way. Few Dalish clans take kindly to humans intruding on their camps, and more than one tale tells of troublemaking humans who found themselves mercilessly filled with Dalish arrows. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. There was a word I wanted to write down. Sometimes the text is kind of not well seen on the background and I might stumble. The Dales. Many forget that when Holy Andraste called out to the oppressed peoples to rise up, it was the elves who answered her first. The humblest slaves of the Imperium became her vanguard, and when victory came, they were rewarded accordingly. They were given a land in what is now the south of Orlais, called the Dales. A great exodus of elves undertook the journey to their new home, crossing ocean, desert, and mountain. Their city, the first elven city since the fabled Arlatan, was called Halam Shiral, and a new era had begun for the elves. But the old era wasn't through with them. In their forest city, the elves turned again to worship their silent ancient gods. They became increasingly isolationist, posting emerald knights who guarded their borders with jealousy, rebuking all efforts at trade or civilized discourse. Dark rumors spread in the lands that bothered the Dales, whispers of humans captured and sacrificed to elven gods. And then came an attack by the elves on the defenseless village of Red Crossing. The Chantry replied with the exalted march of the Dales, and the era of the elven kingdom came to an end. Halam Shiral was utterly destroyed, the elves driven out, scattered, left to survive on goodwill alone. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Long Walk. When our people left Tevinter, we had nothing except the knowledge that for the first time in countless centuries we were free. It was Shortan's dream that one day we would have our own homeland, where we could live as we chose. After the long struggle that claimed the lives of many, even Shortan himself, we were granted the Dales. And though the Dales were to the south of the land of Orlais and a long way off from Tevinter, it mattered little. We were going home, and so we walked. We called our journey the Long Walk, for that was what it was. We walked with what little we had on our backs. Some walked without shoes, for they had none. Whole families, women with infants, the old and young alike, all of them made their way across the land on foot. And if one of our people could no longer walk, we carried him or sometimes left him behind. Many perished along the way, some died of exhaustion, others simply gave up and fell by the wayside. A great number were set upon by human bandits, even though we had few possessions. Along the way, a growing number began to bemoan the decision to leave Tevinter. At least in Tevinter, they said, we had food and water and shelter. What do we have here? Nothing but the open sky and the prospect of that never-ending road ahead. Some turned back toward Tevinter, but most of us continued walking, and the gods rewarded those of us who didn't waver by bringing us to the Dales. Our people called the new city Halam Shiral, the end of the journey, and for a time it was home. as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralafarin clan of the Dalish elves. Just a moment. Valaslin, blood writing. When the children of our people come of age, they earned the privilege of wearing the Valaslin, the blood writing. It sets us apart from the Shemlen and from the elves who have thrown their lot in with them. It reminds us that we will never again surrender our traditions and beliefs. The ritual deserves great reverence. The one who is to gain the Valaslin must prepare it by meditating on the gods and the ways of our people, and by purifying the body and the skin. When the time comes, the keeper of the clan applies the blood writing. This is done in complete silence. Cries of pain are signs of weakness. If one cannot tolerate the pain of the blood writing, then not ready to undertake the responsibilities of an adult. The keeper may stop the ritual if they decide that the one getting the Valaslin is not ready. There is no shame in this, for all children are different, and our ancestors once took centuries to come of age, as told by Gisharel, keeper of the Ralafarin clan of the Dalish elves. Quite a word to pronounce. The Enderfels. The Enderfels are a land of shocking extremes. It is the most desolate place in all the world, for two blights have left great expanses of the steppes so completely devoid of life that corpses cannot even decay there. No insect or grub will ever reach them. It is a land filled with wonders like the Myrdain, with its gigantic white statue of Our Lady carved into its face, her hands outstretched and bearing an eternal flame, or ice-hopped fortress with its walls of living rock towering over the desolate plains below. The Enders, too, are a people of extremes, the most devout priests and the most deadly soldiers, the poorest nation in the world and the most feared. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Ginny TV. The Chastened. The chastened wilders have lived in the Korcari wilds since the first wars with the Alamari drove them southward a millennium ago. According to their own lore, they had always been a forest-dwelling people that adapted quickly to their new home. Game and fish are plentiful in the wetlands, and the chastened thrived. For a time, they and the hill-dwelling Avars were true threats to the northern lowlands. The Tevinter Imperium had arrived and was hard-pressed to keep back the waves of invasions from the south and the west. The fortress of Ostagar was built specifically to watch the chasing hordes venturing north of the tree line. It wasn't until the legendary warrior Hafter soundly defeated the Chastened in the first half of the Divine Age that the question of their ability to contest the lowlands was settled permanently. Today the Chastened are considered largely peaceful, though their ways are still primitive compared to our own. In the Korcari wilds, they live in strange-looking huts built on stilts, or even built into the great treetops. They paint their faces and are split into tribes ruled by shamans, like those amongst the Avars. There are many tales of these shamans having learned their magic from the witches of the wilds, witches that inspire as much terror as they do awe and gratitude, even if there is no definitive proof they exist. In particular, the tale of Flameth, the greatest witch of the wilds, is celebrated amongst all tribes. While there is no way to know how many there are in the wilds today, few travelers that pass through the forest tell of Chastened eking out an existence even in the frozen wastelands of the far south. One can assume that should the Chastened ever organize themselves once more, we might have reason to fear them here in Ferelden. We ignore them at our peril. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Next one is Arlathan, Part 1. Before the ages were named or numbered, our people were glorious and eternal and never changing. Like the great oak tree, they were constant in their traditions, strong in their roots, and ever reaching for the sky. They felt no need to rush when life was endless. They worshipped their gods for months at a time. Decisions came after decades of debate, and introduction could last for years. From time to time, our ancestors would drift into centuries-long slumber, but this wasn't death, for we know they wandered the fade in dreams. In those ages, our people called all the land Elfhanan, which in the old language means place of our people. And at the center of the world stood the great city of Arlathan, a place of knowledge and debate where the best of the ancient elves would go to trade knowledge, greet old friends, and settle disputes that had gone on for millennia. But while our ancestors were caught up in the forever cycle of ages, drifting through life at what we today could consider an intolerable pace, the world outside the lush forests and ancient trees was changing. The humans first arrived from Par Vollen to the north. Called Shemlen or Quicklings by the ancients, the humans were pitiful creatures whose lives blinked by in an instant. When they first met the elves, the humans were brash and warlike, quick to anger and quicker to fight, with no patience for the unhurried pace of elven diplomacy. But the humans brought worse things than war with them. Our ancestors proved susceptible to human diseases, and for the first time in history, elves died of natural causes. What's more, those elves who spent time bartering and negotiating with humans found themselves aging, tainted by the humans' brash and impatient lives. Many believed that the ancient gods had judged them unworthy of their long lives and cast them down among the quicklings. Our ancestors came to look upon the humans as parasites, which I understand is similar to the way the humans see our people in the cities. The ancient elves immediately moved to close Elfhanan off from the humans, for fear that this quickening effect would crumble the civilization. The fall of Arlathan, as told by Gesharel, keeper of the Rolathrin clan of the Dalish elves. Gosh, there are so many notes in this culture and history. Denerim. When anyone in Ferelden speaks of going to the city, they inevitably mean Denerim. There is no other place in the kingdom which rivals it, not in size, population, wealth, or importance. It is the seat of the Thayrin family, the capital of Ferelden, the largest seaport, and by ancient tradition, the meeting place of the Landsmaid. As well, Denerim was the birthplace of Andraste, one of them anyway, as several other sites claim to have been the prophet's early home, including Jader in Orlais. The Chantry takes no stance on which side's claim is valid, but it is well known that Andraste was Ferelden by birth. When visiting the pilgrimage site in Denerim, it is inadvisable to mention Jader at all. The city rests at the foot of the Dragon's Peak, a solitary mountain scarred by ancient lava flows. During Andraste's lifetime, it repeatedly filled the sky with a great column of black ash and sand-burning rock raining down as far away as the Free Marches, but it is now considered extinct. Some believe it merely sleeps and will again darken the sky with ash and fire when the last Ferelden king dies, but this is highly unlikely. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Dragon cults. Let us suggest for the moment that a high dragon is simply an animal. A cunning animal, to be sure, but in possession of no true self-awareness or sentience. There hasn't, after all, been a single recorded case of a dragon attempting to communicate or performing any act that couldn't likewise be attributed to a clever beast. How then does one explain the existence of so-called dragon cults throughout history? One dragon cult might be explainable, especially in light of the reverence to the old gods in the ancient Tevinter Imperium. In the wake of the First Blight, many desperate imperial citizens turned to the worship of real dragons to replace the old gods who had failed them. A dragon, after all, was a god figure that they could see. It was there, as real as the archdemon itself, and as evidence makes clear, did offer a degree of protection to its cultists. Other dragon cults could be explained in light of the first. Some cult members might have survived and spread the word. The worship of the old gods was as widespread as the Imperium itself. Certainly, such secrets could have made their way into many hands. But there have been reports of dragon cults even in places where the Imperium never touched, among folks who had never heard of the old gods or had any reason to. How does one explain them? Members of the dragon cult live in the same lair as High Dragon, nurturing and protecting its defenseless young. In exchange, the High Dragon seemed to permit those cultists to kill a small number of those young in order to feast on draconic blood. That blood is said to have a number of strange long-term effects, including bestowing greater strength and endurance, as well as an increased desire to kill. It may breed insanity as well. Nevarran dragon hunters have said these cultists are incredibly powerful opponents. The changes in the cultists are a form of blood magic, surely, but how did the symbiotic relationship between the cult and the High Dragon form in the first place? How did the cultists know to drink the dragon's blood? How did the High Dragon convince them to care for its young, or know that they would? Is there more draconic intelligence that we have heretofore guessed at? No member of a dragon cult has ever been taken alive, and what accounts exist from the days of the Nevarran hunters record only mad rants and impossible tales of godhood. With dragons only recently reappearing and still incredibly rare, we may never know the truth, but the question remains. From Flame and Scale by Brother Florian, Chantry Scholar, 928, Dragon. Is there more draconic intelligence than we have heretofore guessed at? Heretofore. Gosh, such beautiful words. Draconic intelligence. Quite a collocation. Alrighty, let's move on. History of Ferelden. The occupation was, that's part 2, chapter 2. We read the first one, now it's the second one. The occupation was a dark blot on Ferelden's history. Occupation by whom? Maybe Orlais, yes. The occupation was a dark blot on Ferelden's history. Our people, who from time immemorial valued their freedom over all else, were forced to bow to Orlesian rule. The Empire declared our elves property and sold them like cattle. Chevaliers routinely plundered freeholds of coin, food, and even women and children, and excused it as taxation. And for 70 years no landsmeets were held, for the imperial throne had declared our ancient laws a form of treason. King Brandel was one of those who escaped. He tried to organize the other fugitive lords to retake their land, but Brandel was neither clever nor persuasive, and the nobles preferred to take their chances alone. Ferelden might still be little more than a territory of the Empire, were it not for the fact that his daughter had all the charisma that her royal father lacked. The rebel queen's rule began with the midnight attack on the imperial armory at Lothering. It was swift and successful, and with their pilfered arms the rebels began a campaign against their legions in earnest. But the turning point of the war came when a young freeholder joined the queen's army. The lad, Logain MacTir, possessed remarkable talent for strategy and quickly became the favorite advisor of young Prince Merrick. The queen finally died at the hands of her Legion sympathizers anxious to curry favor with their painted masters, and Merrick took her place as the leader of the rebellion. Logain became Merrick's right hand. Merrick and Logain led the rebels in a new campaign against their Legion oppressors, culminating in the Battle of River Dane, where the last chevaliers in Denerim were crushed. With the capital once more in the hands of Ferelden's, the battle to free our people was finally over, but the battle to rebuild what had been lost had only just begun. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Culture of Ferelden. The Fereldans are a puzzle. As a people, they are one bad day away from reverting to barbarism. They repelled invasions from Tevinter during the height of the Imperium with nothing but dogs and their own obstinate disposition. They are the coarse, willful, dirty, disorganized people who somehow gave rise to their prophet, to our prophet, ushered to an era of enlightenment and toppled the greatest empire in history. There are few things you can assume safely in dealing with these people. First, they value loyalty above all things, beyond wealth, beyond power, beyond reason. Second, although they have nothing in the entire country which you are likely to think at all remarkable, they are extremely proud of their accomplishments. Third, if you insult their dogs, they are likely to declare war. And finally, the surest sign that you have underestimated the Ferelden's is that you think you have come to understand them. Empress Celine I of Orlais, in a letter to her newly appointed ambassador to Denerim. Dogs in Ferelden. I am frequently asked during my travels in other lands to explain the dogs omnipresent in Ferelden. Inevitably, I tell my foreign questioners that there are no more dogs in my homeland than in their own. In every civilized corner of Thedas, an astute observer will notice dogs employed in hunting game, keeping barns and storehouses free of vermin, herding livestock, guarding homes, and even used as beasts of burden in the mountains. It is simply that Fereldans show appreciation for the work that our dogs do, and perhaps the reason for that is tangled up in mythology. Haftar, the first man to be named Tern, the hero who united our Alamari ancestors to drive back the darkspawn of the Second Blight, was reputed to be the son of a werewolf. Now, perhaps this was meant to be some comment on his temperament, or simply a way of making a great man even larger than life. But more than half of the noble families of Ferelden claim to be descendants of Haftar, and consequently many of our people believe that they have some distant kinship with wolves. It's only good manners to be polite to one's kin. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genitivi. Geography of Ferelden. The Kingdom of Ferelden is the southernmost civilized nation in Thedas, although some scholars dispute the claim to civilization. It is perhaps the most physically isolated of all the kingdoms of Thedas. To the east is the Amaranthine Ocean, to the north is the Waken Sea, and to the south the Korcari Wilds, which in the summer months are a vast peat bog, and in the winter become a treacherous labyrinth of iced-over waterways. The Frostback Mountains guard the western border, and only a narrow plain between the mountains and the sea allows travel between Ferelden and Orlais. Most of the land in the central portion of the kingdom, called the Banorn, is open plains. These are crossed by remnants of an ancient winter highway that once connected Val Rayo with Ostagar on the edge of the Korcari Wilds. The western part of Ferelden is dominated by Lake Calenhad, a huge caldera filled by the runoff of glaciers from nearby mountains. Lake Calenhad is home to the famed Fortress of Radcliffe, as well as the Circle Tower, which houses Ferelden's Circle of Magi. In the east is the vast Brisidian Forest, which the superstitious locals profess to be haunted, and from which rises the Dragon's Peak, a solitary mountain that guards the capital city of Denerim. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genitivi. We have like 12 left to read. Politics of Ferelden. To our neighbors, Ferelden seems utterly chaotic. Unlike other monarchies, power doesn't descend from our throne. Rather, it rises from the support of the freeholders. Each freehold chooses the ban or Arl to whom it pays allegiance. Typically, this choice is based on proximity of the freehold to the lord's castle, as it's worthless to pay for the upkeep of soldiers who will arrive at your land too late to defend it. For the most part, each generation of freeholders casts its lot with the same ban as their fathers did, but things can and do change. No formal oaths are sworn, and it is not unheard of, especially in the prickly central Banorn, for bands to court freeholders away from their neighbors And it is not unheard of for bands to court freeholders away from their neighbors, a practice which inevitably begets feuds that last for ages. Terns arose from amongst the bands, war leaders who in antiquity had grown powerful enough to move other bands to swear fealty to them. There were many Terns in the days before King Calenhad, but he succeeded in whittling them down to only two, Gworen in the south, High Ever in the north. These Terns still hold the oaths of bands and Arls who they may call upon in the event of war or disaster, and similarly, the Terns still hold responsibility for defending those sworn to them. The Arls were established by the Terns, given command of strategic fortresses that couldn't be overseen by the Terns themselves. Unlike the Terns, the Arls have no bands sworn to them, and are simply somewhat more prestigious bands. The king is, in essence, the most powerful of the Terns. Although Denerim was originally the Ternir of the king, it has since been reduced in Arlinn, as the king's domain is now all of Ferelden. But even the king's power must come from the bands. Nowhere is this more evident than during the Landsmeet, an annual council for which all the nobles of Ferelden gather, held for almost 3,000 years except odd interruptions during blights and invasions. The sight of a king asking for and working to win the support of lesser men is a source of constant wonder to foreign ambassadors. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. High Ever. Castle High Ever has stood since the Divine Age, when it was not an independent banner, but merely an outpost of the growing Bannern of Emerantine, in the days before Emerantine became an Arlinn itself. The outpost of High Ever was originally held by the Elston family, cousins of the Hoves. In the Age of Towers, however, Ben Conobar Elston was murdered by his wife, Flemeth, thus ending the bloodline. Conobar's captain of the guard, Serim Kuslan, took the lands and title. Wow. So Flemeth killed Ben Conobar, Kuslan's inherited, and we are Kuslan's. Isn't that incredible? What a twist. The Kuslans declared their independence from Emerantine, starting a war that lasted 30 years. When the dust settled, High Ever was on its own and in possession of half the land that had once been southwestern Emerantine. High Ever became a Ternir during the Black Age, when Haelia Kuslan gathered the lords together under her banner to drive the werewolves out of their lands, earning herself the title of Terna almost as an afterthought. Today, High Ever is one of the only two remaining Ternirs, making the Kuslan family second in rank only to the king. For real, the Kuslan family, however, was all but wiped out in an unexpected attack by Arl Howe of Emerantine, and the fate of the Ternir is now in question. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Lothlorien. In ancient times, Lothlorien was little more than a trading post that served the fortress of Ostagard to the south. Nowadays it is larger, serving Radcliffe and the community of merchants and surface dwarfs near Orzammar. Its location on the North Road gives it strategic value, so control of Lothlorien has historically been a matter of contention between the southern Bannern and the South Reach Arlinn. King Calenhad himself stepped in and awarded the town to South Reach in the Exalted Age, which has largely ended the feud, or at least the appearance of it. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Jenny TV. Nevarra. The fourth time I attempted to cross the border into Nevarra from Orlais and was turned back by Chevaliers, I decided to take the more roundabout path, a ship back to Ferelden and then another to Nevarra. The outcome was more than worth the trouble. The whole country is filled with artistry, from the statues of heroes that litter the streets in even the meanest villages of the glittering golden college of Magi in Cumberland. Perhaps nowhere is more astonishing than the vast necropolis outside Nevarra city. Unlike most other followers of Andraste, the Nivarans do not burn their dead. Instead, they carefully preserve the bodies and seal them in elaborate tombs. Some of the wealthiest Nivarans begin construction of their own tombs while quite young, and these become incredible palaces, complete with gardens, bathhouses, and ballrooms, utterly silent, kept only for the dead. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. The noble families of Ferelden. The occupation left empty castles in its wake. Whole families were butchered in the initial invasion, and all those who couldn't or wouldn't bend knee to the emperor's puppet king were declared traitors and hunted. Many bloodlines ended on chevaliers' blades at dusty crossroads, in forest clearings, or in freeholds. And then there were the turncoats. To curry favor with their new master, some nobles took up arms against their brothers. They betrayed and murdered the rebel queen, an act that created even more vacant titles and lands, once King Merrick exacted justice. That Ferelden didn't fall apart after their legions left is a testament to the strength of King Merrick. The old families still held grudges against those who had sided with the emperor, and those new families that had been granted titles were viewed as interlopers. The landsmeets that followed Merrick's coronation were tense, to say the least. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Ostagar. Representing the furthest point of encroachment by the ancient Tevinter Imperium into the barbarian lands of the southeast. The fortress of Ostagar was one of the most important defensive holdings south of the Waking Sea. It stood at the edge of the Korkari wilds, watching for any signs of invasion by the barbarians known today as the Chasing Wilders. Straddling a narrow pass in the hills, the fortress needed to be bypassed to reach the fertile lowlands to the north, and proved to be exceedingly difficult for the Wilders to attack because of its naturally defensible position. Like most imperial holdings in the south, Ostagar was abandoned after Tevinter's collapse during the First Blight. It was successfully sacked by the Chasing Wilders, and then, as the Chasing threat dwindled following the creation of the modern Ferelden nation, fell to ruin completely. It has remained unmanned for 4 centuries, though most of the walls still stand, as does the tall tower of Ishal, named after the great Archon that ordered its construction. Ostagar remains a testament to the magical power of the Imperium that created it. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Kunari. Anyone who travels far enough to the north will eventually encounter the Kunari, white-haired, bronze-skinned giants, a head again taller than a man, with frighteningly calm demeanors and a sort of sparkling fire behind their eyes. For quite a long time, people believed that all Kunari were male, or that the men and women were simply indistinguishable. It wasn't until the Blessed Age that diplomats from Rivain were allowed, however briefly, to visit Paravolen, and there they discovered the Kunari females that exist in abundance and are quite easily recognized. The Rivani say that Kunari have a certain kindness to them, or at least a conspicuous lack of cruelty, although I didn't observe the creatures closely enough to evaluate their character. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. Rivain. Nowhere in my travels, not in the heart of the Imperium nor the streets of Orzammar, have I felt so much an outsider as in Rivain. The chant of light never truly reached the ears of these people. The years they spent under the thumb of the Kunari left most of the country zealous followers of the Kun. But resistance to the chant goes deeper than the Kunari war. The Rivani refuse to be parted from the seers, wise women who are in fact hedge mages, communicating with spirits and actually allowing themselves to become possessed. The chantry prohibition against such magical practices violates millennia of local tradition. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genitivi. The Tevinter Imperium. The Imperium is little more than a dilapidated old slattern, crouching in the far north of Thedas, drunkenly cursing at passerby to recall her faded beauty. One can see that Minrathous was once the center of the world. The vestiges of her power and artistry yet stand, but they are buried in the layers of filth that the Imperium's decadence has accumulated over the ages. The magocracy live in elegant stone towers, literally elevated above the stench of the slaves and peasants below. The outskirts of Minrathous are awash in a sea of refugees turned destitute by the never-ending war between the Imperium and the Qunari. And yet, the Imperium survives. Whether with sword or magic, Tevinter remains a force to be reckoned with. Minrathous has been besieged by men, by Qunari, by Andraste herself, and never fallen. From A Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genetivi. Another word to look at. The next one is Geography of Thedas. Thedas is bounded to the east by the Amarantine Ocean, to the west by Terrassion Forest, and the ocean to the west by Terrassion Forest and the Hunter Horn Mountains, to the south by the snowy wastes that lie beyond the Orkney Mountains, and to the north by Donark Forest. The word Thedas is Tevinter in origin, originally used to refer to lands that bordered the Imperium. As the Imperium lost its stranglehold on conquered nations, more and more lands became Thedas, until finally people applied the name to the entire continent. The northern part of Thedas is divided amongst the Anderfels, the Tevente Imperium, Antiva, and Rivain, with the islands held by the Qunari just off the coast. Central Thedas consists of the Free Marches, Nevarra, and Arlay, with Ferelden to the south. What lies beyond the snowy waste is a mystery. The freezing temperatures and barren land have kept even the most intrepid cartographers at bay. Similarly, the western reaches of the Anderfels have never been fully explored, even by the Anders themselves. We do not know if the dry steppes are shadowed by mountains, or if they extend all the way to the nameless sea. To a nameless sea. There must be other lands, continents or islands, perhaps across the Amarantine or north of Par-Volin, for the Qunari arrived in Thedas from somewhere, but beyond that deduction we know nothing. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genetivi. The Grey Wardens. The first blight had already raged for 90 years. The world was in chaos. A god had risen, twisted and corrupted. The remaining gods of Tevinter were silent, withdrawn. What writing we have recovered from those times is filled with despair, for everyone believed, from the greatest archons to the lowliest slaves, that the world was coming to an end. At Weishaupt Fortress, in the desolate Anderfels, a meeting transpired. Soldiers of the Imperium, seasoned veterans who had known nothing their entire lifetimes except hopeless war, came together. When they left Weishaupt, they had renounced their oaths to the Imperium. They were soldiers no longer. They were the Grey Wardens. The Wardens began an aggressive campaign against the Blight, striking back against the Darkspawn, reclaiming lands given up for lost. The Blight was far from over, but the victories brought notice, and soon they received aid from every nation in Thedas. They grew in number as well as reputation. Finally, in the year 992 of the Tevinter Imperium, upon the Silent Plains, they met the archdemon Dumat in battle. A third of all the armies of northern Thedas were lost to the fighting, but Dumat fell and the Darkspawn fled back underground. Even that wasn't the end. The Imperium once revered seven gods. Dumat, Zazikel, Thoth, Endoral, Rezikael, Luzakan, and Urthemiel. 4 have risen as archdemons. The Grey Wardens have kept watch through the ages, well aware that peace is fleeting and that their war continues until the last of the dragon gods is gone. From Ferelden, Folklore and History, by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. And the final one, Darkspawn. Those who had sought to claim heaven by violence destroyed it. What was golden and pure turned black. Those who had once been mage lords, the brightest of their age, were no longer men but monsters. Trinodis 12:1. Sin was the midwife that ushered the Darkspawn into this world. The Magisters fell from the Golden City, and their fate encompassed all our worlds, for they were not alone. No one knows where the Darkspawn come from, a dark mockery of man. In the darkest places they thrive, growing in numbers as a plague of locusts will. In raids, they will often take captives, dragging their victims alive into the deep roads, but most evidence suggests that these are eaten. Like spiders, it seems Darkspawn prefer their food still breathing. Perhaps they are simply spawned by the darkness. Certainly, we know that evil has no trouble perpetuating itself. The last blight was in the Age of Towers, striking once again at the heart of Tevinter, spreading south into Orlais and east into the Free Marches. The plague spread as far as Ferelden, but the withering and twisting of the land stopped well beyond our borders. Here, Darkspawn have never been more than the stuff of legends. In the northern lands, however, particularly Tevinter and the Underfells, they say Darkspawn haunt the hinterlands, preying on outlying farmers and isolated villages, a constant threat. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. And here we go. We read a lot of notes from magic and religion and culture and history, and what's left is 4 notes from books and songs, and as I said, we'll read them later when we retrieve the Legend of Calenhad, chapter 1, and the History of the Chantry, chapter 2, because we only have chapter 1. So that's it for this recording, I believe. Let me save the game as the camp, and I bid my farewell, and looking forward to meeting you in the following episode. Yeah, bye bye everyone, and have a nice one out there.